All right, everyone, let's get started. My name is Runa, and I'm so happy you all could be here. In the chat periodically through our class, I will put my class handout, which has the extents that are inspiring our build today, as well as the list of materials that I'm using and some things like basic steps and supply sources, stuff like that. It's also available on my website, which is runamakeshistory.wordpress.com. So, hi everybody, we are learning how to craft little baby fibula today that will work with early period personas. The first portion of our class here is going to be me just kind of talking at you about a couple of things, and then we're going to transition to the part where you're going to see me build one of these little fibula. If you have questions during our class today, put them in the chat and I'll try to answer them as we go. If not, I'll take care of them at the end. So do not be afraid to ask questions. That's how we all learn together, and it always inspires me as well. So today we're going to be working with brass, and most of these fibulas that we see in period are copper alloys, which means they're either brass or bronze, which are mixes of copper with zinc or tin or lead in various compositions. The alloy that I'm going to be using today is 260, which means it has a fair amount of copper in it, which is going to allow us to make it nice and pliable to get the really pretty spirals that we're hoping to achieve. A couple things that I want to mention. I think if you're not familiar with metalwork or wire work, there can be sort of like mental and financial barriers to this craft, and I strive to make it accessible for everybody because I feel like this is a really fun thing to do. So if you give me just one moment, I'm going to switch to my secondary camera, which gives us a better sort of like zoomed in look at my workspace. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is, let me find my center there. This is the pin that we're going to be crafting today. It's inspired by an extant from the Carpathian Basin region that has a really fun spiral at the top and then goes down into these smaller little loops here. The extant that we're going to be sort of inspired by today is much larger, and I have crafted that one as well, but for the purpose of the class and kind of, you know, allowing us to talk about what we're doing and learn a little bit, we're going to make a tiny one today. So the fundamentals that you're going to learn during my class here are going to allow you to make much more than these spiral brooches. You are going to learn how to make hairpins with these same techniques. And this one just has a glass bead here after the spiral. Here's another cool pin. And I have the extent for this listed in my class handout, so you can take a look at it. And let's see. You can also make Anglo-Saxon pieces with this. And I've made the spiral wrist clasps that you can see. This is a ring. The same techniques we're going to be learning today, you can make Roman earrings. So these are like 1st century Roman earrings. Let me zoom in a little bit there, see if y'all can see that a little better. My website is runamakeshistory.wordpress.com. Boop, 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 boop. Trying to find the center is hard. Okay. And you can make pieces like this Roman necklace. Thank you, Lady Isabel. Lady Isabel put it in the chat so y'all can see it. She is a dynamo with the chat. I also have these 14th century trefoil pins you can make with the techniques that we learned today. And with the same techniques we learned today, you can make a Roman diadem. As you can see, I like earlier period stuff, and a lot of the wire work stuff kind of, from aside from Anglo-Saxon things, kind of dies out like 3rd century AD or so. So, all right, now we're going to get to our materials. So, firstly, what we're going to be making our little brooch with today is some brass rod. You can get this in all sorts of lengths, all sorts of widths. Today, I'm going to be using some brass rods that are meant for like machining or other crafts. And these are from K&S Metals. These are 3/64 of an inch or 1.19 millimeters. K&S sorts their metal types using this number. So if you want to get these exact rods, they're about 12 inches long. It's number 8161. And this pack I can find at the hobby store. You can also order them online, and this pack of 4 rods costs about $2. You got either a MAP gas or a butane torch. Now, for the sake of the class and for speed, I'm going to be using my MAP gas torch today. And that's because it burns a lot hotter than a butane torch. However, a butane torch is just your regular like creme brulee torch. And that would work perfectly for this project. You can pick one up for about 30 bucks. It doesn't burn as hot, so it's going to take you a little bit longer to do your project, but that's okay because brass melts at about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, and butane gas burns at about 2600. So you don't want to end up with metal dripped on your desk. That would be no fun. But this here is the torch I'm going to be using today. Okay, and if you have any questions about any of that, please let me know. I also have a quench bucket, which is just a little bucket of water here because we're going to be heating up our metal and quenching it quickly in order to anneal it. Okay, and right here I have a bench block, which is basically a little piece of steel here, and that's what we're going to be hammering on. And I have a piece of composite wood underneath it to sort of absorb the shock of my hammering because it can get a little bit loud. I'm also going to be using approximately an 8-ounce steel hammer. This is a little guy. It just has a small handle on it, but you can find ones with larger handles on it. And this isn't too terribly heavy. We're not going to be, we're not crafting in like the forges of Hephaestus here. We're not doing armor, we're not doing big things. So really we can just use the weight of this hammer to hammer our metal piece. And, we don't have to apply too terribly much force to our little bench block. I also have, which is nice to have, but not really necessary, is a nylon hammer. In period, these would be leather or rawhide or something like that. But basically it's a hammer that is going to allow you to apply friction to the piece that you're hammering, but it's not going to indent your piece at all. So it's going to absorb and it's not going to leave any dinks or dents or anything. So it's not going to flatten your metal. I also have an assortment of pliers. We've got, these are chain nose pliers. They're kind of like an alligator mouth, but they're smooth on the inside. And then I have some round nose pliers here. And these are things that you can pick up, in most jewelry sections of the craft store now. They have a great assortment of pliers. I also have just some wire cutters here, though we will probably be using the entirety of our rod today. And then you're going to need some sandpaper or a needle file or, some sort of file or something like that to sharpen the end of your pin. So a couple things I want to talk about safety wise. We are working with very, 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 very hot fire. So make sure you have a quench bucket nearby. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher nearby. Depending on the alloy of brass that you get, the lead content can be a little higher. So I would always suggest wearing a mask, like an organic vapor mask, because you can poison yourself. And I have done it and it is not fun. I also suggest wearing safety glasses or some sort of eye covering during this process. Please work in a fire safe area. Generally, if I'm doing torch work, I am either outside or I am at my fireplace hearth because it's all tiled up. I realize that, you know, not everybody has a fireproof space, but you can make one on your desk with like some fire bricks and tiles and things like that. So safety is number one. Okay.
There was a question about the torch head.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's just, in regards to the torch head, it's just a normal torch head, nothing special. It is different from the one that you would use like for glass. That's a hot head. This is just a regular torch head. So nothing special. And then the butane torches normally, like this little butane torch that I have came with a bunch of different tips because it's like one of these Dremel ones that's like multi-use and whatever. I just plucked them all off and it just has the normal little tip there. And that's what you want to use. Okay, so I'm going to show you the extant, or rather the, not the extant, the piece that we're going to be making today. So we're going to start with the head of the spiral and we're going to work our way out. And we're going to come down and create like the little safety pin part of our fibula here. And then we're going to come down and do our little loop-de-loos. Come down, create the loop here, and come up. And then whatever we have left there, we probably will trim maybe an inch off of our 1 foot wire because that's how much it's going to take to make this little one. So depending on the extent that you're using, in this case, the extent is on my class handout. Some of these spirals from this time period are tapered in the center and get larger to the full width of the wire, and some of them are not. Look at your extent to sort of determine what works best. I'm going to show you how to taper the wire so that way you can get a really nice tight spiral in the center. This one actually, I think, shows it a little bit better. This is another piece, but you can see how like the center there is tapered and then it comes out. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to grab my piece of wire. If at any point you have questions about what I'm doing, don't forget to stop me. All right. So our wire just comes like this. It's really basic and flat. So what we're going to try to do is stretch it out and make it pointy. We're going to do that by hammering evenly on all sides while making sure that we rotate the wire. So I'm going to heat it up first, and I'm going to try to do the torch work on camera as best I can. I understand that it may be difficult to see it sometimes, but I don't want to set my phone on fire today. So my safety is going to be number one, and the safety of my house is going to be number one for this. So if it's difficult to see, I'm sorry, but please ask questions. So we're going to be heating this metal, which is very thin. It's going to heat up very quickly. We're going to be heating it till it gets cherry red. And when it gets cherry red, we're going to stop heating it and we are going to quench it in our quench bucket. What we're doing when we heat the wire is softening it. This is a chemical reaction that's happening. We're changing the molecular structure of the metal. So we're going to soften it. Right now, it's really stiff, and it's not going to give us those beautiful, elegant spirals that we want to happen. So we have to soften it. So I'm going to take my torch here, and fair warning, it is a little bit loud. So just stay with me here. Okay, and we're gonna quench it. So we heated like the top, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch there. And so now it's nice and soft. Like I can bend it super easily with my fingers right now, like super easy. But every time I bend it, I'm applying friction to it, which is hardening the metal. And that's going to give us, you know, the stiffness and the strength. So I'm just going to flatten that back out as best I can. There we go. Now that's perfect. And I'm going to take my steel hammer and I'm going to start hammering it on my little bench block here. And I'm going to try and zoom in as best I can. So that way y'all can see that a little better. So I apologize for this noise as well, but I'm just tapping here. I'm not using a ton of force to come down on our wire, just little taps. And as I'm tapping, I'm sort of spinning the wire because I want to make sure that I'm getting even pressure on all sides. Okay, now eventually this will harden back up and I can no longer bend it. So we're going to have to anneal again. A lot of this process is hardening and annealing and hardening and annealing. And you'll see that can kind of get repetitive, but it's what we have to do to create, you know, those beautiful bends and spirals in this piece. So I'm going to heat it up again and anneal our metal again. Ooh. And quench it in our bucket. Okay. And hammer again. And it's going to be a little difficult to see, but I'm going to try and show you how we've gone from like a round wire to there's now facets and edges. That's because, you know, we're pushing this wire, we're hammering it, and we're pushing it so that way it's going to flatten out for us and give us that nice taper. Okay. All right, I'm going to anneal it again because it feels pretty stiff. There we go. And we're going to hammer again. And I'm just spinning the wire again, and I'm hammering sort of like where I want the taper to begin and then towards the end. So like boop, 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 towards the end, like while I'm spinning it. Okay, I probably need to anneal that again. Let's see. Okay, I probably need to anneal that again. If we were to continue to hammer our piece without annealing it, eventually it would just get brittle and just break off. And we don't want that to happen. So we're going to anneal it. When in doubt, anneal. It basically resets and softens your metal, and sort of prevents just catastrophic destruction, I suppose. Okay, I'm just checking my work here, seeing it is difficult to see on camera, but seeing sort of how that tip is beginning to become more slender and more tapered. Now, as you can see, the edge that we've been torching, that we've been annealing, has darkened up. Those are oxides forming on the outside of our metal. And that's why we have our sandpaper that's gonna buff that out for us. And there are lots of like jewelry chemicals that you can use to get that off. But sandpaper, really fine sandpaper and some steel wool will help take care of that and make your piece nice and shiny again. So I'm probably just gonna anneal this one more time and hammer this one more time because to taper it all the way down would probably take the entirety of this class, and I don't want to do that. So hold on. Okay. Okay. So get it to a point where you're happy with the taper. And now we're going to start the center of our spiral. So we're going to anneal and soften our wire again, so that way we can tightly curl it. So let's anneal here. Okay, so now we're going to get our pliers. And we are going to begin our spiral by curving the very edge here and creating like a little hook. We're going to grab a very small amount of this metal here, and it's nice and soft. So it's going to curve super nicely for us. If it's not nice and soft, it will break. And we don't want that. Okay, so now that I've curved it, I'm actually, when I'm curving it, I'm feeling the friction create some resistance in the wire. So I'm going to anneal it again because I don't want this to break off. That would be super tragic. Okay. So what I'm going to do now that I have this little hook is I'm sort of going to crush this hook in on itself. I want the center of my spiral to be really tight. So I'm going to sort of crush it in on itself. You can see. I'm using my chain nose pliers here, which are flat and smooth on the inside. So they're not going to leave any plier marks on anything. Okay, I'm actually going to anneal that again because I can feel it getting stiff. So go. Okay. All right, now it's nice and soft, so we can get a really nice tight little center there. Okay, I hope y'all can see that. Excellent. All right, so now that we have this little tight center, we want to coil the rest of our wire around it. So we're going to want to make sure that this wire is nice and soft, nice and annealed, so that way it'll easily flow around this little center part that we have here. So we're going to heat it with our torch. And now I'm going to take my chain nose or flat nose pliers. I'm going to hold on to that little sort of like hook that we started. And I'm going to push the wire around and start coiling it around like a cinnamon bun.
You're off camera.
Oop. Okay. And if I feel the wire getting too stiff or tight, then I'm going to want to anneal it because I want this to be a nice and smooth spiral. I'm just moving my pliers and pushing the wire around. Okay. I'm going to anneal that again. Notice when I'm using my torch to anneal, the flame is fairly large, and I'm not putting the metal right by the torch tip. I'm actually putting it in the center of the flame because that's where it's the hottest and you have the most control of the heat there. But if you're starting out, I would suggest using the butane or propane just because it's going to heat a lot slower. All right, so more of the same. We're just going to hold on to our little spiral center and we're going to push our wire around and make our spiral. The more time we spend forming this little center now, the smoother our spiral will be. Because if this has any lumps or bumps or weirdness in it, it's going to telegraph to the rest of our spiral and it's going to look weird. Okay, so I'm going to anneal that again. Okay. All right. So we're going to keep sort of curling our spiral until it gets to the size that we want. And if we look at our example, we're getting there. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. Make sure that my spiral is staying nice and smooth. I'm going to anneal again. I find spirals really soothing to create. I think that's why I enjoy making them so much. They do take a lot of wire though, fair warning. Like one of these big boys, that's like 4 feet of wire right there. Now, luckily you can buy wire in lengths like that. So if you wanted to make something that large, you could. And I have a bunch of suppliers on my class handout that I've personally used and would recommend them. Anneal.
pieces. That's why they like them. That could be why they like them.
They are super pretty. Like, I am a sucker for anything in period that happens to have a spiral on it. I really am. Okay. Go. Oops. Ah, see, I reached the end of my little annealing there and it created like a little bit of like a weird corner edge. So that's okay because we can anneal it and sort of reset it.
Ooh, show us how to fix and fake.
Yes. Okay. So now that that's super nice and soft again, I can push it a little more. So that way it's nice and curved. Okay. So let's take a look at our example.
There's a question about your plier technique.
Okay, I have a question about the plier technique.
Is there any particular technique to how you're using the pliers or where you are or where you're bending from on the side?
Okay, so when I'm using my pliers, and these sort of open like a V, they do have pliers that open, they're called parallel pliers, which that would be ideal, but I'm holding the spiral just in there like you would hold, I don't know, like you would put it in your mouth if it was like a cookie or something. I don't know. I had ice cream before this, so I'm like, my brain is very like food centric right now. You know, but I'm holding it. I'm not gripping it super tight because even though these pliers are smooth on the inside, any sort of toughness that I add, any sort of kink, because that wire is being softened and annealed, it will transfer to your metal. And you don't want that to happen because then it won't be like smooth and pretty and stuff. All right, so now that we've created our spiral, we have to sort of curve around here and create sort of like the pin catch for our fibula. So we're going to make sure our wire is nice and annealed before we do anything. Okay, and quench it. Okay, and then let's see. Oops, wrong pliers. Okay, so it's going to come out straight to the right here, and then we're going to create like a little loop, and we're going to go whoop, and we're going to head back this way. So let's see, right about there is good. I'm sure if you were like a person that enjoyed measuring, that you would measure it, but I do not enjoy measuring, and so I am not going to. I am definitely an eyeballer when it comes to most things. All right, so we have curved our wire, but that is still pretty large there. We've applied friction though, so now it's hardened. So what we want to do is anneal it, soften it, and then we're going to crimp in this loop here. Okay. So flat pliers and gently, gently. I'm holding this here because I don't want anything to twist. And I'm going to gently just push. I don't want anything to go squirrely. Do it slowly. And if you have to anneal again, that's perfectly fine. Because if we had spent all that time on that beautiful spiral and then put, you know, bent this and then it cracked, ooh, we would be so mad. I'm going to actually anneal that again. Okay. And then crush that or continue to. All right, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. So now we are going to head down and we're going to start our first loop. And our first loop, I guess you guys see it this way, is going to go to the left. So we're going to anneal our wire and we're going to get our round nose pliers. Remember, in order to create these really pretty spirals and loops, we have to anneal our wire. There is no two ways around it. Okay, so that's about directly under our, there we go. That's like directly under our spiral there. So I'm gonna kind of awkwardly hold it. Oh man. See, I squeezed it too hard and I made a dent. See, you can see a little dent right there because our wire is super soft. Womp womp. There's not much I can do about that, honestly. Like you would buff it out or sand it out, but that's okay. The imperfections are what make it handmade. Okay, I have my flat nose pliers again, and I'm going to hold on and bring this down. There we go. Okay. Okay. And we want our little loopy to come down and spin to the back. This is, I'm sorry if this isn't like totally on camera, but there we go.
Zoom out a little bit.
Yeah, I could zoom out a little bit. Okay. So our round nose pliers are tapered. So if we hold on to our piece around a diameter, which works well for what we're doing. All right, so I'm not happy with that circle at all because it looks not like a circle, but an egg. The way to fix that is because the annealing was here and then it stopped. And so it got it's really stiff and hard here. So I need to anneal this again so I can fix it. Again, if you are just starting out doing these things, I would really not suggest a map torch because it gets your metal hot super duper fast. And this hot metal will go from super duper hot to a puddle on your desk very quickly, especially when it's thin like this. Okay, so that's a little better. And then we're going to come around and make another loop here. And then we're going to go straight down. So that way we have like, it's like a flower and two leaves. That's what it kind of reminds me of. So we're going to do the next leaf. I'm going to grab a hold here and bring our wire around. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. And I can feel it stiffening up. So we're just going to anneal it again to be safe. Also, if you're a well-seasoned professional at this and you're looking at what I'm doing and you're going, oh my God, that's totally not how I would do it, that's okay, because we're all going to do it a little bit differently. All right. So I want this to go straight down. All right. So we got our little leafy flower, guys. And then we're going to go straight down and we're going to start the coil for the bottom, which kind of provides the spring down there. So again, we have to figure out how far down we want to go. We need to anneal that metal, and then we're going to coil it around our pliers. All right. So our little one right here, that's about, what, 3/4 of an inch down? So like right here. And we are going to coil it. And we're going to add all the coils over here on the right side. So let's see. Okay. There we go. Now, to use your X-Tint to inform you about this. Some fibula just have one little loop here. Some have 4 or 5. So just pay attention to your piece, and it'll really tell you how many loopies you got to do. All right, so now that's the majority of our piece done. Now we're going to trim off. Oh, we have a fair amount of extra. We could have made our spiral a little bit bigger. We're going to trim off our extra, and we're going to anneal and curve this piece around here. So that way it's going to catch the back of our pin. So this is going to be a little weird and tricky because we only want to anneal this little piece here that's sticking up. We don't really want to anneal much else. So we're going to try and be as targeted as we can with our torch. Okay, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to, where are my cutters? There. I'm going to trim off our little fibula baby here. Right about there. I said right about there. Ah, there we go. Safety first. I hope y'all were wearing goggles. Okay. And then we're going to use our round nose pliers to curve this piece around. So let's see. All right. So we curved it around, and now it's going to catch our little pin there. And that's about how I'm probably going to curve that in just a little bit more because this will slide out fairly easily. I want it to sort of curve around. Okay. Yep, see, there we go. So now it's going to hold that, and we can still easily pop that out and slip it across our shoulder or across our cloak or whatever or what have you. And there we go. Now, finishing. Here's where we're going to talk a little bit about finishing. To sharpen this pin, it's as simple as using a needle file or some sandpaper. I have like a little file here that I can use. I I cut it, I trimmed it at an angle to sort of give me a head start. And I want to work down this little burr here and make sure it's nice and smooth, but also tapered. And this is just some like 180 sandpaper. You could use 220. You know, you're just trying to remove a fair amount of material. Here. Okay. All right. And if there are any places that are a little too soft, you know, they're bending a little bit too much, we can what's called work harden them. And we can put them against our bench block here and hammer them. But I'm going to use my nylon hammer because I don't want to crush our pretty spiral here. So we're just going to gently tap. We're just going to apply a little bit of friction to harden it, but we don't want to flatten it. And honestly, the benefit of copper things is the more you move them, the stronger they'll get. Okay, so we have all of this fire scale all over a piece now. It's not shiny, and who doesn't love shiny? So I have a piece of 1500 grit sandpaper here, and I'm going to wet sand because I don't want to breathe in these particles. So I'm just going to take a little bit of water from my quench bucket and just sort of buff this up. Like I talked about before, they have like, if you want to go really in with this craft, they have all kinds of jeweler's pickles and things like that that you can use to chemically remove this fire scale, but you're still going to have to buff it up a little bit, either with like a Dremel or hand tools or something. Okay. I'm getting that little center part is always the hardest for me. Okay. Let's see, almost got it. There we go, not bad. Okay. And obviously the longer you spend on that, the shinier it shall be. But my friends, there we go. Those are the basic fundamentals of wire working with brass. And we made a baby fibula today. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And I hope y'all had a good time. And I hope y'all learned something. And don't forget, I have my class handout posted in the chat, so you can look at all the extents I use for this class. I have a materials list. I have supply sources. I also have all of my contact information on there. So if you are getting stuck or have questions, please reach out to me either through email or Facebook Messenger or whatever's most comfortable for you. I'm happy to help you on your wire journey. So thank you, friends. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad this felt accessible.